Hi, Mackenzie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and I'm fascinated. You are a storyteller who teaches story. And there's a big difference between someone who's a storyteller and that's what they do, and someone who can actually teach it, particularly helping businesses learn and share their stories. So I'm fascinated and excited to talk to you and help our audience better understand how important story is, not only in life, but in business too.
Yes, I'm super excited.
Okay. So let's get started. What is your background in terms of your career, and did you grow up wanting to be a storyteller? Were you an English major? Like what is it that you wanted to do with your life that ended you where you ended up here as a storyteller?
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting story. I was going to nursing school. I was going to be a nurse. That was my plan since I was very, very young. I always wanted to help people. I was either going to be a nurse or a kindergarten teacher. That was the plan. Social media was never really um the plan for me. I'd always loved writing. I took a couple classes in college, but again, like I was going to be a nursing major, so mostly science classes. And it wasn't until, I kind of realized that I needed a backup plan when COVID hit. That I was working in a nursing home waiting to get into college after being waitlisted for 3 years in nursing school. And just getting into nursing school is kind of difficult in general, anyways. But I was waiting it out, and I've always loved writing. I had tried to write a couple of books being a little teenager on little apps, Wattpad and stuff like that, right? Little fanfics. I'd always been captivated with being captivated in stories, and the way my brain works is like, what did she have to say to get me to, like, why am I so interested in this right now, right? And so I had always been very analytical in that sense. When COVID hit, I decided to take my love of writing and kind of start writing other people's content. I'd always been around in the business space. My mom was doing Party Light and Pampered Chef when I
Oh
was
yes.
3 years old.
Yeah.
Um, so she had continued to, do random direct sales products, businesses. As I was growing up, I'd always had friends that did it. And I was also very interested in growing that sense of community that had always come along with direct sales, I think. And so I started writing people's content.
So
Yeah.
content
Yeah.
online. One
Mhm.
of the things you said earlier that really stuck out to me, you said that you were interested in finding out why that person, what they were writing interested you or what they were sharing with you interested in you. And I hadn't really ever thought about that a single time until just now, why we are attracted to certain stories and
Mhm.
how we find our people, especially like on a social media thing. It's very specific and you're talking about writing content. It has to be specific content because it's just too noisy out there.
Yeah.
So the why we're attracted to specific things, that's why people say so often, be authentic and your people will find you. But
Mhm.
you can't just be authentic. You have to write and you have to present content and do it in such a way that's so specific that yes, someone like you or someone like me will feel drawn to it even if we don't know why.
Exactly. And I think the general idea of being authentic or being yourself online, um, it's so hard to kind of maintain that. And I mean, anytime you show up online, it's like a skewed representation of what you think you are being authentic as. And it's so hard to kind of like keep that consistency and keep that like, oh, this is me being authentic. And then you kind of lose yourself in that because like this persona that you built for yourself that is your authentic self, is that really you or is that who you think your audience wants to
Well,
know?
and also, are you being authentic if you're stopping what you're doing to take a picture and archiving what you're doing that's authentic? It's an interesting thing, right? To be that I don't know if vulnerable is the word. It can be in circumstances depending on what it is you're teaching and what you're sharing, but also just being willing, like, just from a person who's watching this now, Reels are content that's created for attraction to bring people into your world, and stories, when you use stories in Instagram, that's to nurture the audience you already have because only people who follow you are in your stories. So, you understanding just how precise that is and
Mhm.
how important it is, and how specific it is. When you started creating content for yourself, you went from creating content for others. There had to be a light bulb moment. You thought, well, I'm doing this for everyone else. Surely I can do it for myself too.
Mhm.
Was that the
As
transition for you?
that was. And so, I would say February of 2020 is when I officially launched my kind of copywriting business. It wasn't storytelling yet because I hadn't realized that what I was doing was storytelling. And I had to sit with myself for a very long time and read months worth of content to kind of come up with my framework and strategy and what this was and why it was working so well.
I
Um,
love that. I love that because some people come in thinking I just had a woman on my show the other day who started just chronicling archiving her runs. And
Mhm.
then next thing you know, she's got all these people asking specific questions and she's taking too much time to answer them. So she starts building a course and PDFs, digital products to answer the questions to save her time. And now she has 135,000 followers and she's a coach that helps people run.
Mhm.
But if she'd set out to say, I'm a runner who's going to coach, that's a harder thing to do than to come to it authentically sometimes the way that you're describing.
Yeah. And I think it's also a skill because,
Yes.
social media is so fast paced, right? And life is so fast paced and we're so like in the moment being like, I need to write a piece of content right now. I have 5 minutes to do it. Like, what can I say? And for me, I think the pivotal moment was, I had been writing content this way for almost 2 years. I knew exactly what I needed to say. It would just take me a while to kind of articulate and really get out what I wanted to say, and then I had my daughter. And, my husband had 1 day off of paternity leave. I was by myself. I did not have anyone, and I had a business to run, right? And so I took about 6 months off of maternity leave, and then when I came back to it, I was so out of it that social media changed so fast, and I had to go back again and go through my frameworks, and I, had to figure out a way to make it faster in terms of, like, what do I need to say today? What needs to be heard today? What does my audience need for me today to be able to grow this community and do it authentically through story because I've been in the marketing space for so long and I just didn't want to have to tell people what their mistakes they were making anymore or get people to follow me in an authentic way and make a bunch of promises that I couldn't keep and I just didn't want to do that. Like it just did not feel good. And so when I was creating and going back to all of my content and how I kind of created this, yeah, I realized, I was saying certain things. I was starting my content certain ways. I was being able to tell stories very fast, would break the stories up so that all of them could kind of compound on top of each other. And I think, like I said, social media goes so fast and life goes so fast, and we get so in the moment that we have to have these moments of reflection and kind of say, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to figure out what's working. I need to figure out what's not working. What stories really resonate with my audience? What stories don't? Where can I continue to bring this story up again in repetition? And where can I not? Right? It's just a lot of reflection.
Well, and the
And I
only way
think
you can really get there is to just start doing it, to
yeah.
just start doing it, to start to see what content works and what doesn't. Let's take a quick break and I want to talk about it specifically for businesses. So, we're talking about social media right now, but in general, what I find businesses don't know their story. And it doesn't matter if you're a business downtown or a business on social media like yourself, or you're a product business, whatever it is, there is story behind that. And people buy from people, not just because it's the product. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with you, Mackenzie. Okay, we're back. Mackenzie, we're talking about story as it applies to the business journey that you've had, and that now you've really created this space for yourself where you get sales every single day in your digital product space. You have people reaching out to you, you have people following you, liking you, commenting, you have engagement. And in the social media game, that's number one, engagement, right? Because it means you're resonating with your audience and you are selling what you're trying to sell, which is storytelling. For businesses and owners who are watching who have nothing to do with social media, perhaps, maybe they have a product, maybe they have a service. It is the same application in terms of being efficient in how you connect with your customer, whatever that customer or client looks like. So, as an example, what do you find businesses miss the most when they're trying to share their story or even identify what it is, let alone articulate it to the masses?
It's a great question. I think the biggest mistake I see a lot of business owners doing quite often is thinking that their story is something that can't be sold, or their story is something that doesn't build trust, or their story is something they just plaster on a website. And for me, I incorporate a piece of my story in every single thing I do. Every single piece of content has something of me in it. This is how I break up my stories, right? Because I have a very, very big story, right? You ask me what my story is, I'll tell you for 20 minutes long, right? And so when we hear story, what's your story? That's often the story that won't get repeated back to us. A story that's 20 minutes long. Okay, but how do I take that story and then I break it up into pieces of content that I can use every single day?
And when we say content, that could be just conversation,
Yeah.
right? That could be in person
Everything.
if you're a business, in person conversation. Yes. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but content, conversation. Yes.
The context is important, right? And so I think when we have these big stories in mind, I'm always breaking it down into two kind of categories. I have a category component of trust, right? And so those stories are going to be relatable back to my past struggles, my clients' past struggles. For whoever watching, it's your past struggles and what got you to the transformation or the result that you have today, right? And the other category of that is going to be your authority based stories. So the results you're selling, the desires you're selling, the transformation you're selling, what you are selling your customer is your authority. How have you got there? Do you get your clients there? What's your framework? What's your methodology? What's your strategy, right? Like how are you showing your audience that you know what you're talking about, because that builds trust, that builds community, that builds leadership, that builds everything that your audience needs to be able to buy from you, essentially.
When you get to that sweet spot of knowing, breaking it down, you say things like, one of the things that has stuck in my head, just in terms, so when we talk about reels, for those who are watching who may not be familiar with Instagram or Facebook and what those are the videos that many of us scroll all the time. And something happens at the beginning of those, that there's a hook on the screen usually, or something in your case, something that you say from the start that draws them in. You're having this issue. I resolved it this way. It's the you, the I, the you, the I. And sometimes there's just an I, if you're going to share your story, but it always has to relate back to the person you're talking to,
Mhm.
whether that's in conversation, right? Nobody likes to talk to somebody who only talks about themselves. We want to be asked questions. We want to be engaged with, however that looks. And so, from a business point of view, you are solving a problem, whether it's a product, like we said, a service that you provide. When you start the you and I, what is the first thing that you suggest your clients to really take a look at? Because whether you're talking about the transformation or the promise, or you're talking about the personal story behind you, do you still use the you and I? It's still the give and take, even when you're talking about something related to yourself and your story.
So when in like years of practice and storytelling, right, I've developed these different sort of frameworks. What you're talking about is what I call the double hook method, and it's for people who and business owners who find themselves wanting to educate their audience and wanting them to talk to their audience. Like if you're struggling with sleep training your child at night, 6 months old, you're really struggling to get more than 2 hours of sleep. right? Um, I then want you to insert a piece of you, a piece of your authority, a piece of your expertise, or a part of your struggle right after that hook to make sure your audience knows, okay, I'm not just reading this piece of content for the information, I'm reading it to connect with the person writing it. And that's kind of where I think storytelling can really shine. And I mean, you can put anything of your story into any piece of content, right? So if you're struggling with sleep training your child, this is what I did, and it's worked for all three of my children, right? It's not you having to say, well, this is my product, go and buy it. That's a problem a lot of people have is, well, how does my story sell? Right? How do I insert my course, my services, my whatever into a piece of content? Because I don't want to be salesy. I just want to talk about my stuff. I'm passionate, but I don't want to have to jam my product down people's throats. That's what a lot of people struggle with, right? So insert a little bit of your expertise, right? This has worked for all three of my kids. Or I was in the same boat. I struggled with the same thing for my first child. It took me 6 months to figure it out. This is what I've learned. Right. So even when you are talking at someone and you're wanting to bring up, hey, I have a problem. I know that you want solved. Let me help fix it for you. It's still, I don't want you to scroll past this piece of content and never think about me again. I
Mhm.
want you to read this piece of content and not only connect with the information, but connect to who I am and the person I am and me trying to help you and me wanting you to be a part of my community. That's kind of where I mesh the two.
Well, and you make a really good point about all of that because I think about so I was just talking with my friend the other day who sold her pickleball clothing line. And she was the first ever in the world with a pickleball clothing label. And so for her, she had the market, right? I mean, nobody was
Mhm,
doing that yet. So she was going around to place to pickleball tournaments and building relationship. And so
mhm,
she's selling them in person and then they're going. And so now they've already built the trust. So then when that friend
mhm,
says, hey, you got to check out this pickleball clothing line. I met this woman and it's she's got an amazing story. Done. Like, that is her way of selling an in-person product. The same thing happens when someone walks into your store. They have a problem that they need solved, whether it's a pair of shoes or a product to clean their tub, whatever. You are trying to make sure that they get what they need and that you know what they need and how to
mhm.
deliver that. And maybe there's a story behind whatever product person used to clean their tub. Who knows? But I think about that too and how um, the trust that you build because now say there's more pickleball clothing now. You're going
Mhm,
to still buy from that person that you connected with or that your friend referred you to because you've removed all objections because they care about you and
mhm.
how you got to that pickleball clothing line. Okay. We're going to have a whole another, have you on again because we got to take a break and come back. And I don't even think we've scratched the surface. So let's take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, Mackenzie, we just have a few minutes left. So what I want to do now is let's talk about ads because that's what we are typically used to in a business sense, whether that's Facebook ads that you scroll and see or ads on the radio, a billboard that you put up. You have such a limited amount of time to attract someone's attention. And let's use an example. Let's say a shoe store, because people think, well, I'm selling shoes. Why do I need a story? Or what does my story have to do with selling shoes? What would be an example of how one would typically go about it that might not resonate with their shoe customer and what you suggest in terms of using story.
Yeah. So what I typically tend to do is story can be authority, story can be expertise, right? So if I'm putting an ad up for a sale that I'm running on my shoe store, right? I'm gonna go in with expertise and authority because that's gonna capture my audience's attention very, very quick. So shoe store, trusted for more than 50 years, 100,000 customers sales this week or something like that, right? I'm going to go in with expertise that says the best shoe in town for our desert hiking trails or hi, hiking shoes trusted by more than 50 of our most famous hikers, right? So going in with that authority and expertise very, very quick, it piques curiosity, right? Oh, you're telling me that you're an expert in this. Why do I need to listen to you? I'm curious, right? Maybe they pop in for the shoe sale and that trust is going to come from the employees working. That's going to come from the vibe that they feel in the store, right? That's going to come from someone connecting to you while you're picking up that hiking shoe that was on the ad, right? Oh my gosh, do you guys go into any trails, on the weekends, right? It's just that trust feeling doesn't have to come from an ad. That's what they get when they see you, when they binge, right? If you're on social media, they're binging your content, they're going to your website, they're gaining the trust. It's really hard to gain trust very, very quick, but you can gain a sense of leadership and an expertise and authority very, very quick through those statements.
And that's the difference between them going to your shoe store and the shoe store down the street,
Mhm.
right? And having people and surrounding that knowledge. So if it's a business that's online, you usually like yourself, myself, we're kind of, we're the face of our business. We're the voice of our business. If you're in a store downtown, you will have employees that are also part of that business, so it's important that they're well trained, that
Mhm.
maybe, hopefully, if you're selling hiking boots, they hike as well. They can speak to the quality or the reason why this is the better one compared to this one, or this one works
Exactly.
better for this or that. And so I think it's the same as true for an online business and just understanding, like, when I had my alphabet pillow business years ago, there was not a lot of website shopping and things.
Mm.
So I wanted the hook, and that's why my hook was getting my pillow on the Friend show, and automatically, what kind of authority did that give me?
Exactly.
So that was what I was looking for, and I thought, "I'm going to the best show there is, and if they say no, I'll go to the next show," and luckily they said yes for that e-pillow on Rachel and Joey's apartment wall, changed everything for me, and I
Mhm.
didn't know, like you were talking about, you don't really know till you get started. I knew what the goal was, but I didn't know the outcome.
Mhm.
So we just have to get real honest about what it is we want. How do we want to serve the people who are coming to our store, whether that's an online store, an Instagram page, shoe store downtown. And you do it so well. I'm sure there are people watching this thing. I've never thought about my shoe store this way, or I've never thought about my business in this way. And I wanna have you on again and again because we have 1 minute left, and I just want you to give us one little nugget to take home with us, and then know that I'll have you back again because I think your way of helping businesses figure this out is fascinating. Jay, give me something. We got 50 seconds.
Perfect. Listen, your story is your expertise, and you don't have to share your story. You don't have to tell your story in every single piece of content you do, every single thing you do. Break your story up, make it meaningful with every single piece of content. Make your videos, your content, your reels, whatever the case, maybe make it mean something. Make people need to come back to you to read more of your story, to learn more about you. And don't think that you have to give it all away in one singular post and then you never tell your story again.
Mhm. Well, I'm fascinated by you. I love learning from you, and, thanks for all your help today.
Yay! This was awesome. Thank you.